Did you ever hear of the killer diet that kills? I mean, everybody heard about a killer diet in a positive way. Everyone teaches us this diet's going to help you lose half your weight. This one's going to turn you into a little stick. This one will turn you into some type of alien. All types of diets. But there's actually a killer diet that's dangerous. A diet that literally kills, not just the body. A diet that kills marriages. A diet that kills servitude of God. A diet that kills every single thing that's good about your life, including your intimacy. And unfortunately, this diet is something that you'll find in countless households and countless lives, even in the Jewish community. This diet is a diet that's so dangerous, the people that are on it don't even realize that they're part of it. Tonight you're going to learn a lot about this diet in the Jewish Intimacy series. You're also going to learn about how to avoid it, and in fact, if you are in it yourself. It may sting a little bit to hear some things that perhaps are relevant to you, but by the end of the lecture, you'll realize that this is the only way to get yourself out of this diet if you're in it, to keep yourself away from it if you're not, but most importantly, to get on the path of being holy. Enjoy, share, and be holy. B'Shem HaShem Na'aseh V'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Tuesday night Jewish Intimacy series, where we're learning for some time now about, I think we are lecture number 27 in this series about Jewish intimacy, really what intimacy is supposed to be versus what it's become, not just in the world, but unfortunately even in the Jewish world, and how learning the writings of the sages, especially here, the Iggeret Ramban, Nachmanides, that was written over 700 years ago, could certainly improve our lives, both in marriage as well as our servitude of our Creator. Tonight's shiur will be for the Refuah Shlema, for Rabbanit Sarah Bat Anat, Rav Efraim Ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Levana Bat Sarah, Avi Mori David Ben Esriya, Imi Morati Doris Bat Jora, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to watch our lectures, support, share, and all the other good stuff. Anyone that wants to go to our Kiruv store to get some free stuff to distribute in their community, the good news is we have started the shipments of the new book, Ora Levana. Baruch Hashem, it's here, it's in America, it's in Israel. In Israel, we've already distributed over 10,000 copies for free, Baruch Hashem, and I think by the end of this week, we would distribute probably another 10,000 or close to it. In America, we have about 5,000 copies. We've already started shipping a bunch of them out. Anyone that wants free copies to distribute in their community, just go to the website bhkiruv.org or kiruvstore.org. Kiruv is KIRUVSTORE.org. You get 20 copies of these books. If you want more, you can let us know. This is, Baruch Hashem, a very good book. It has different insights about every parasha in the Torah. Also, my favorite is the new cards that we have, the movie cards. Those are also available on the store. They actually look a little bit different than this one. And Be'ezrat Hashem, those are also being shipped out everywhere in large quantities because they're easy to give out. You could just simply take one of these little containers, put it on a table at a synagogue, at a supermarket, at some type of Judaica store, and people just take the cards on their own. Each one that takes it goes to your benefit, Baruch Hashem. So not much work for a lot of benefit. So that's that. Anyone that wants to donate and obviously help us fund all of this, because everything that I just told you is all free, but it doesn't, it obviously has a huge cost. Anyone that wants to donate can donate on the websites that I mentioned, or can go to our main website, which is be'ezrathashem.org or bhtorah.org. Two different websites for different uses. You could donate over there. So with that being said, let's get to it. We have the Iggeret Ramban. Now, the Ramban has taken us into the world of intimacy in a way that we never thought was possible. Simply put, he's prepared us spiritually, which we expected. He's also prepared us physically, which we somewhat expected, but not in the way that he's done it. But he's also prepared us mentally. What is really Jewish intimacy all about? But in the last several weeks, the Ramban has been actually going deep into the health aspects that are required for healthy intimacy. And in so many words, the Ramban has taken a break from the deep Torah sources that he was using in the first several chapters and really giving us a health lesson. A health lesson that is not only something that is effective, so it could change your life, could help you serve Hashem better, but it's really a health plan that shows you how much the sages loved Am Yisrael. And this too becomes Torah. As the Chazon said about the Rambam, Maimonides, he covered all types of wisdom in his writings, and included it inside his teachings of the Torah. And when he went into the world of mathematics, teaching us the numerology of different things, this was wisdom that was partly, learned from the Gentiles. So people would think, okay, if you have, mathematical wisdom, that's obviously very valuable, it's very important, but why include it in the Mishneh Torah? Why include it in a work of Torah? And the Chazon says, once the Ramban realized that this is important, he included it in the Mishneh Torah because this too is part of your servitude of Hashem. This too is part of your prerequisite knowledge in order to serve Hashem. And this too became Torah. So all of these numbers that he used, the Chazon says, they became holy. They became holy, and literally, if one were to take the notes of the Ramban, where he simply wrote numbers, whatever numbers, even if it's something as simple as 2 plus 2, or 2 times 1,000, or whatever number he wrote, that because he used it for the purpose of Torah, it actually turned the numbers into something holy. And if somebody would want to dispose those papers in that time, they would actually have to bury it like they would a Sefer Torah. Of course, today, nobody would take anything that the Rambam wrote and put it in Gniza and bury it, but rather, most likely, either collect it or sell it to a collector, as these things are very, very valuable. But the same concept is with the teachings of the Ramban here, where he's actually teaching us about the different health benefits or the detriment of not eating healthy or not knowing how to eat properly, especially when it comes to intimacy. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is well known around, from across the world, both by the Jews and the Gentiles. Everyone that thinks about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai immediately thinks about the mystical works and the mystical writings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Zohar HaKadosh, whether it's uncovering for us and unveiling the mystical aspects of the upper worlds, or the names of different angels, or the different names of different levels of our neshama. So Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was literally dealing with the issues that are beyond the scope of our knowledge, beyond the scope of our intellect altogether, and he literally dealing with the supernatural as if it's natural. But yet, if you look into the Talmud, if you look into the Gemara, you will find countless places that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, alongside many other sages, lowers himself, in a sense, by teaching us things that are for the everyday person. Things that you would never think such a great sage would ever even bother with. But if you look at the Gemara in Masechet Niddah, on page 17a, we've actually mentioned this already before, but we are going to go a little deeper into it tonight, where Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is giving us a very serious warning. And he says the following: Amar Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, חמישה דברים הן שעושה אותן מתחייב בנפשו ודמו בראשו. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says there are 5 things that are so dangerous that whoever does any of them is liable to pay with his life. And should he indeed die, his blood will be upon his own head. What does this mean? Here Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is telling us there are 5 things that a person can do that are dangerous, and if a person is careless when it comes to these issues, which are health issues, if he is simply careless about them, then he could lead himself to the point of death, but even more so, he will actually be punished for being careless about his health. What are these things? האוכל שום כלוף, ובצל כלוף, וביצה כלופה, והשותה משכין מזוגין שעבר עליהם הלילה, ועלם בבית הקברות, והנוטל ציפורניו וזורקן לרשות הרבים, והמקיב דם ומשמש מיתתו. The first one is one who eats a peeled garlic bulb, or a peeled onion, or a peeled egg that has been peeled and stayed that way overnight. Meaning that you peeled an onion, you peeled a garlic, you peeled an egg, and you know what, you decided you don't feel like eating it. You figured, you know what, I'll eat it tomorrow. I'll do something with it tomorrow, and you put it in the fridge, you leave it on the counter, whatever you want to do with it. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is, the second you did that, and you left that onion, you left that garlic overnight, that garlic, that onion, that egg became poisonous for you. You're no longer allowed to eat it. And if you do, you're putting your life in danger. Now, of course, the science of it is not going to match up. If you go to any of the health gurus out there, the health experts, the scientists, they're going to tell you, well, what's wrong with a peeled onion? So what if it stayed in the fridge for a few hours? Like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal if you peeled an egg, you left it in the fridge, 8 hours later you decide to have it for breakfast? What's the big deal? So health-wise, according to science, it's not going to do anything. You're not going to find the issues, at least not that I know of. But says the Maharal Miprag, he's the one that is famous for being not only one of the Gedolei Hador that gave an extraordinary amount of commentary on the Torah, but also is one that's known for the golem, where he created a golem, taking the dirt of the ground and creating a living being that he used as a protector for the Jewish people at the time that had many troubles with the Gentiles that were going and trying to torture us in many different ways, especially coming from the church, led by one particular evil person named Todos. So anyway, the Maharal says that the things that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai mentions as hazardous are not within the physical scope of science dangerous. Rather, the spiritual effects associated with them were considered hazardous. And because of this, it is pointless to speculate on the reasons why these things in particular are deemed injurious. In so many words, you just have to take the word of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai at face value. You're not going to understand why a peeled onion, a peeled egg, peeled garlic, left overnight is hazardous for you and you should not eat it the next day or any other day. But rather, just take it at face value, this is dangerous for you. Now, a person that doesn't want to listen. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai says, if something bad happens to you, you're going to be prosecuted for it. Why? Because you were careless. You were careless. Furthermore, he says, someone that drinks a beverage, such as wine or water, that stayed overnight, meaning you had a cup or a bottle of water, and you left it on the counter. You didn't cover it. The bottle cap was left off. But for all intents and purposes, the composition of the water, the wine, the whatever beverage you were drinking, nothing changed. Physically speaking, nothing changed. I mean, if it was soda, obviously it probably doesn't have any more gas in it, the little bubbles, but all intents and purposes, nothing changed. Scientifically, nothing changed. Wine, sometimes people like to let their wine breathe. So they, when they open it up, they leave it open for a little while. Now, of course, there's no problem with doing that during, when you're about to drink it shortly later. But if you leave it open the whole night, don't drink it in the morning, says Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Why? It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Same thing with water. Same thing with any other beverage. In fact, there are some that are so stringent that in this, and so careful, I should say, with this issue, that during the night, specifically during the night, not during the day, during the night, if they, let's say, for example, they have a bottle of some type of beverage or a cup, and they walk away from it, and they forget about it, even if it's for a short period of time. Let's say they take a shower or something, they go to the bathroom, they go to the garage, whatever, they walk away from it for, a good amount of time, and they, in so many words, it escapes their mind that this beverage is still on their desk. Some are stringent enough where they say, listen, when they come back and see, I left this beverage uncovered, and they pour it out. They don't drink it. Now again, these are not laws that you have to keep. These are suggestions. But Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is telling you that if you ignore them, you're putting your life at risk. Now, the stringency that I mentioned as far as walking away from it at night, that is not something I heard from Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. These are other sages, Kabbalists, that are saying that it should be that stringent. But nonetheless, what Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is mentioning here in the Talmud, Masechet Niddah, page 17a, is if it's left overnight, it becomes dangerous. And for the same aspect of what the Maharal already explained to us, it is spiritually dangerous, not physically dangerous, at least what we know of. Furthermore, he says, someone who sleeps in a cemetery, or someone who trims their nails and throws them on the ground, or someone who lets his blood out. People bloodlet in the past, they used to be very popular. Apparently today, in the I think that it's become more common again, where people actually bloodlet, especially people that are wealthy and are very, health conscious, or at least trying to be health conscious. They go to certain experts that know how to take blood out of your body without killing you. And some people literally think that this is a very, very healthy thing to do. In the past, some have said this is a very healthy thing to do. Others disagreed with it because it also in those days led to a lot of infections and even death. But needless to say, there is a long history about bloodletting that apparently is coming back around and is becoming more popular among the wealthy people that are doing it more often now than they have in many, many years. Either way, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says there's nothing wrong with bloodletting unless you're going to be intimate right after. So, the Gemara then clarifies each one of these 5 dangerous practices. One who eats a peeled garlic bulb has done a dangerous thing. This applies even if the garlic bulb or the egg or the onion was placed in a basket, and even if it was tied, and even if it was sealed. Meaning, even if you put it in a Ziploc bag and then put it in the fridge, if it's peeled, should not eat it if the next day. Because even if they were not exposed to the air overnight, still, since they were left unpeeled overnight, an evil spirit rests upon them. Proving what the Maharal said, which is that this is something that has to do with the spiritual aspect of it, not the physical aspect. However, we may say that eating these things is dangerous only when one has not left either their root or peel attached to them. But if one did leave their root or peel attached, we have no objection to it. So here it gives you a little out, where if you're going to leave the peel or the root attached to it, you can leave it overnight. I don't see necessarily the point of, if you're going to peel it, peel the whole thing. If you're not going to peel it and you're going to wait for tomorrow, wait for tomorrow. But again, this is really supposed to teach us the point, which is not only the dangers here, but also how much the sages cared about the well-being of Am Yisrael, to the point where they literally stopped their teachings of the laws, the teachings of the mystical, the upper heavens, the teachings of the details of what happened in the Torah, and they start guiding us about how to live a better life in every single aspect. And there are literally thousands of places around in the Talmud that you will find different guidance about how to live a better life, whether it's the intimate aspect of life, or the health aspect of life, or the marriage, or the raising children, or business, or legal. Literally every single aspect of life is discussed here. It even talks about how to invest. Shlomo HaMelech gives a guidance of how to invest, and the sages build upon that. And anyone that wants to learn wisdom, the sages say, should learn the Bava Kamas, and the Bava Batra, and the Bava Metzia, meaning the three tractates that used to actually be one. They used to be combined as one, but it was too big, so they split it up into three. Those three tractates are the ones that teach a lot of the details of the legalities or the illegalities of business law, and things like that. Anyway, continuing with Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he says, one who sleeps in a cemetery has done something dangerous. We understand the wine, the garlic, the onion. But what's with the cemetery? Now, obviously, I don't think anybody normal would go sleep in a cemetery. But there are many abnormal people. Or there are many naive people where they go to a cemetery because they lost a loved one and they're so distraught, they don't want to leave. They simply decide to stay there all night. And they fall asleep. This is a dangerous thing. Why? Because if a person sleeps at the cemetery, then the spirit of impurity should rest upon that person. And sometimes these spirits may put the person in actual danger, life danger. One of the examples of this that is recorded in history was actually something that happened to one of the greatest sages in the last 500 years, Rabbi Chaim Vital. Rabbi Chaim Vital, once he writes himself of what happened to him, once goes to a cemetery and out of nowhere he feels like something entered him. He feels like something entered him, and he started struggling to move, struggling to function, and he started going towards his rabbi, the Arizal. Literally, by the time he got to the Arizal, he died. Rabbi Chaim Vital died. The Arizal, who loved Rabbi Chaim Vital dearly, he was his main Talmid, resurrected him, took him out of, brought him back to life. And he has this whole record of this. He wrote literally every single step of what happened and who and what and when. And the Arizal explained to him which spirit it was and why he almost died. Very, very interesting. But the point being is that going to a cemetery in general is never a good idea. Unless you're going to the gravesite of a tzaddik, and that tzaddik has a specific road that was built just for him, where you're not going to be walking over other graves, and still even this is not recommended for women to do. In fact, the Zohar HaKadosh says that a woman should never go to a cemetery, even to the graves of our own parents, because a woman going into a cemetery puts her ability to ever have children at risk every single time. And even if she no longer has the ability to have kids anyway, she's older, it's still not good for her to go. But someone who sleeps at the cemetery, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, he's putting his life on the line. Many times, people that deal with... you see people that are interested in witchcraft, and all types of voodoo, and all types of Satanism, and things like that. It's common for them to visit the cemeteries often, and some of them actually get some of their, I could call it, abilities to do things after those visits. The problem is what they don't realize is that while they think they got an ability to move things, an ability to see things, what they don't realize is that they just became a prisoner. They became a prisoner of whatever spirit entered them, and it's only a one-way street, meaning there is no turning back. In so many words, it's the equivalent of selling your soul to the Satan. And it's something that is almost impossible to get out of when people make certain commitments. Many times people that are involved with Satanism and witchcraft and things like that, typically they make sacrifices either with their seed or with blood, or both. Sometimes the women use their menstrual cycle blood for stuff like this, and they can do a lot of horrible things to other people and feel powerful as a result of it, but they don't realize that, and eventually they do realize that they actually have become a prisoner to this thing. Either way, this is one of those places where I say, don't try this at home, and if you do, your blood is in your own hands. Last but not least, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai says, someone who trims their nails. Trims their nails, their toenails, their fingernails, and just like many people do. And I've actually even seen this, in people when I used to live in New York. It was very common for people to literally, do what they're supposed to do in a bathroom in privacy. They do it in public. Or sometimes I even used to see people do it in the office. They start cutting their nails. And, it's so small, they just let it drop on the floor. Or it flies up, flies everywhere. No one really cares. Someone that does such a thing is considered a wicked person. In fact, the Gemara says that 3 things were said in respect to nail trimming. One who burns them is considered a chassid. A chassid, a pious person. One who buries them in the ground is considered tzaddik, righteous. One who throws them down where anybody can walk over them, leaves them on the floor, he's considered rasha. He's considered wicked. Why? Because if a pregnant woman walks over one of these fingernails, the impurity from those fingernails could lead her to miscarry the child. So this is also something that this explains why the first one that burns them is considered pious, and the one that buries them is considered a tzaddik. Like, what's the big deal? He buried his fingernails. Why even go through that much? Now, burying them is the equivalent of throwing them in the toilet and flushing the toilet. That's the equivalent of it. Or you could actually go and physically bury them. Why is burying them considered a righteous person? Because you are removing the risk of anybody walking over it. If it's in the ground, that's it. It's gone. If it's down a toilet, it's in the garbage, it's done. So how come the one that burns them is actually considered a chassid even more than a tzaddik? Because of 2 things. Number one, while burying them lowers the risk drastically, it doesn't eliminate the risk, because you could always miss 1 or 2 or something can come up, and whereas burning them certainly eliminates the risk. This obviously takes time. This is a extra effort. But even more than that, the Chachamim teach that this also is a major effort by the person, because the Tosfot says anytime somebody destroys a piece of themselves, it actually weakens them physically for a period of time. In those days, I know that some of you are, or probably all of you, are going to be disgusted by this, but this was something that was very common in the old days, where poverty was a norm, and many people would do things whatever they could to survive. One of the things that women that were very poor would do, if they had cats, if they had pets, they would actually feed them the blood of their menstrual cycle. So at least these animals would survive, and because they weren't able to feed them regular food. Now, the Tosfot says here in the Gemara in Masechet Niddah that this is forbidden. It's forbidden for a woman to do such a thing, because by doing it, she would be weakening her own body, even though the blood comes out anyway, even though this is something that doesn't make any scientific sense. still we know that when a person destroys a piece of themselves, it weakens their body. Physically, their body, and therefore it is not allowed. Not allowed for her to weaken our body for the sake of a cat. And the same reason, this explains the same reason of why the one that's a chassid that burns the fingernails is considered a chassid, because he's not only taking the time to go and burn them and go through that whole effort, but he's also weakening himself for the sake of other people to protect them from any risk of his nails. Now again, this is not an obligation to bury them. It's not an obligation to burn them, but certainly it is it's important for a person to do that and not be considered evil in the eyes of God. Now, as far as the point of all of this is that we see from there that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai took time out of the world of the above and started teaching us things that have to do with our world, have to do with our lives. The same you will find with here this Ramban, as he says the following. Here in this chapter we have told you of the way of the proper foods. In addition, it is proper to tell you that even with good proper food, it is not necessary to fill one's belly, but rather to eat in moderation, so that the body's nature may process it and quickly convert it into clean, pure blood. For if there is a great quantity, it is not grounded up as well in the stomach, and it will give in return a bad and filthy blood, more so than if a little had been eaten of coarse and bad food. Here the Ramban tells us about the killer diet. What's the killer diet? Not killer diet like the expression of killer being a good thing, but killer rather being a terrible thing. Here the Ramban is telling you that he already told you about different foods that you should eat, different foods that you should avoid, different foods that the Rambam said are literally poisonous. He says, taking all of that into account, now I have to tell you about not just the quality of your food, how clean it is, how light, how heavy, the type of food. No. Now I'm going to talk to you exclusively about quantity. How much you should eat. And a person should eat in moderation. Enough to satiate you, but not to the point of filling you up and blowing you up and making you into somebody that's, unfortunately how people usually finish off their dinners, especially if they're eating out. And they feel like they have to take advantage of every penny they just spent. He spent $100 on that steak. He's going to eat every penny of it, even though he's already full after $20 worth of steak. So here the Ramban says that if you eat in moderation, your body will be able to convert that food quickly into blood that's going to be pure blood. But if you indulge, if you are a glutton, then what ends up happening is that even if everything that you're eating is healthy, it'll turn into poison. It'll turn into poison more than if you eat junk food, but only a little bit. If you ate junk food, but only a little bit, it'll actually cause less damage than if you eat a lot of healthy food to the point where you're just bloated. That's what the Ramban is telling you. So, we have to go and see where is this in halacha. The Rambam spoke about this across his works, both in Sefer HaMitzvot and also in Ilchot Deot, in the Rambam. In chapter 4, after the Rambam told us about the different things to eat, to not eat, and how he even gave us the disclosure that anyone that listens to his instructions precisely is guaranteed to never get sick. A promise that you cannot make without some type of literally divine inspiration. The Rambam says in chapter 4 of Hilchot Deot as follows. A person should never eat unless he is hungry, nor drink unless he's thirsty. He should never put off relieving himself, even for an instant. Rather, when he feels the need to relieve himself, move his bowels, he should do so immediately. Furthermore, halakha number 2, a person should not eat until his stomach is full. Rather, he should stop when he has eaten to close to 3/4 of full satisfaction. Meaning, you're eating, but not until the point where you feel like, I'm finished, I'm good. That's already too late. Why is it too late? Because as you're eating, the body starts to work. The body starts to digest. Now, as it's digesting, you're starting to get more and more full. But that means that process takes time, especially if you're not eating appropriately, where you're eating the heavy food first and the light food later. For example, if a person has meat and vegetables, the Rambam writes he should eat the vegetables first and then eat the meat. And the reason why is because the vegetables are the lighter food, and therefore they're going to be digested faster. And then you're going to have still all the energy left to digest all the heavy food, the meat. But if you do the opposite, what ends up happening, as our Ephraim explained to me this, which is literally brilliant, is that if a person eats the meat first, and he eats the vegetables later, or he eats the meat first and the chicken later, chicken obviously being lighter than the meat. Since the process of digestion can take 6 hours or so, and the body, the temperature inside your body is much hotter than the temperature outside, that means that the food is going bad, is deteriorating much faster when it's inside your body than when it was outside of your body. And therefore, if a person eats a piece of meat first, that meat starts going down the tube. He's thinking, it's all going in the same place. What's the big deal? The big deal is that since you put that piece of meat into your mouth first, you swallowed it first, it's going down the tube first. A few minutes later, a few seconds later, whenever it is, you put the vegetables down, but that means that they're behind. They're not going to pass them. So the body is going to start exerting all of its energy on this piece of meat. This is no different than if a car that you is not exactly a supercar, all of a sudden you decide that you're going to go up the mountains of Jerusalem with it. You're going to start going up the mountains of the Himalayan mountains with it. You're going to start going up the mountains with it. In reality, once you are a quarter into it, half into it, you're going to start praying that the car doesn't roll back. Why? Because you're exerting all of the energy, which many times has a detrimental effect. Now, in this particular case, even if your body has perfect ability to digest this meat, you're exerting all of the energy to digest this meat, but it's still going to take time. It's still going to take hours. In the meantime, the vegetables or the chicken or combination thereof is sitting there waiting in line, waiting to be digested and deteriorating faster because the body temperature is much hotter. It's no longer in a fridge. It's no longer on the fire. It's no longer being preserved, and it's no longer being cooked. It's deteriorating quick. And the food literally deteriorates that by the time you actually digest that meat and it gets to the chicken or it gets to the vegetables, they already have become partially rotten. Which is literally now, when your stomach finally receives it, it's like you're digesting now rotten food. You're digesting bad food. Hence the reason why several hours later, all of a sudden you have a stomachache. All of a sudden you're not really sure what's going on with you. It's not what you ate, but rather how you ate it. But here the Ramban is adding furthermore, it's not even just what you ate and how you ate it, but the quantity that you ate. The quantity itself should never be to the point where you are full with that last bite. Rather, your last bite should be I'm not full, but I'm not hungry anymore. You are 3/4 of the way there. Why? Because once you're 3/4 of the way there, the food that you ate already in the last few bites hasn't been digested yet, hasn't hit those nerves, hasn't hit those sensors inside your body to let you know you're full. Once you let some time pass, usually it takes, somewhere around 2, 3, 4 minutes, all of a sudden you feel full. Even though you haven't eaten in a few minutes, all of a sudden you feel full. Sometimes it could take, depending on the person, it could take 10 minutes, but all of a sudden you feel full. That's a healthy full. That's a healthy full because you really ate what you needed. Anything after that is gluttony. Anything after that is too much. Anything after that is, the Ramban calls it, poison. So here he's telling us that a person should not eat until his stomach is full, meaning that you feel the stomach, you feel yourself full as you're eating. That should never be. You should drink only a small amount of water during the meal. He also talks about how a person needs to obviously preserve his hygiene, where he should not eat until he checked himself, that he knows that he does not need to relieve himself. Never start eating if you have to go relieve yourself. It's both spiritually and physically unhealthy. In fact, if you have to relieve yourself, you can't pray. So a person has to make sure that as soon as they wake up in the morning, don't hurry up to go to the synagogue and skip the bathroom. You have to go to the bathroom. Even if that means you'll be late for prayer, you have to go. You cannot pray to HaShem with a dirty body inside. Also, if a person was to bathe with hot water after exerting himself, it would actually be healthy for him, it would be beneficial. And after he has bathed, should wait a short while and then eat. Don't shower and then right away eat. Wait a little while, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half hour, depending on the body again. But don't do it right away. One should always eat while seated. Anyone who eats while he's walking or exerting himself, aside from it being bad manners, so much so that the Gemara in Masechet Brachot says that it's better to eat sitting down next to a dead body than eat standing up outside in front of people. So it's a horrible character trait to eat standing up. Needless to say, the Rambam says that a person that's walking around while he's eating is bringing serious harm to himself and all types of sicknesses. Now, as I said, if a person, the Ramban says that if a person desires to eat poultry or meat in one sitting, he should eat the poultry first and the meat later, because the meat is the heavier food. It should go down second. Same thing with all other types of food. If he wants to eat eggs and poultry, he should eat the eggs first and then the poultry. Whatever is the lighter food should go first. But then the Rambam says, in Halakha number 9, that there are foods that are extremely harmful to a person and he should never eat them. Large fish that are aged and salted. Cheese which is aged and salted. Truffles and mushrooms. Meat which is aged and salted. Wine from a press, cooked food which has been left over until it produces an odor. And any food with a bad smell or a bitter taste. These are like poison to the body, says the Rambam. So here the Rambam is literally going into the world of food, inserting it into the laws of how to live a healthy life, both spiritually and physically, and is warning us from these things that more or less all make sense. All should be done easily. But yet, few people do it. Lastly, we're going to mention what the Rambam brings here, and he says overeating is like poison to anybody's body. it is the main source of all illnesses. Most illnesses which afflict man are caused by harmful foods or by his filling his belly and overeating, even if he's overeating healthy foods. Some people say, listen, the quality of my food is great. I'm only eating organic. Great, you're eating organic. Fantastic, but you realize that an elephant also eats organic. He also eats only vegetables. He's a vegetarian, but he still weighs 4 tons. Just because you're eating healthy food doesn't mean you could eat like an elephant. This is the mistaken notion that people have, that just because if it's good quality food, they could just simply eat and indulge with no end. The Rambam says, no, overeating is dangerous. It's like drinking poison. And this is what King Solomon said in Proverbs: guards his mouth from eating harmful food and eating his fill, and his tongue from speaking about other than his needs. So here we see again that the Rambam, as well as the Ramban, Maimonides and Nachmanides, take time to teach us diet, and both connected to the potential of what's going to come out of a person as far as what type of children he'll produce. In Halakha number 19, in chapter 4, the Rambam writes, the seed, the semen, is the strength of the body. It is its life force and the light of the eyes. The more frequent the emission of sperm, the greater the damage to the body, to its strength, and the greater the loss to one's lifespan. This is what Shlomo HaMelech said in Proverbs chapter 31, verse 3, do not give your strength to women. Whoever is steeped in sexual relations, old age springs upon him before its time. His strength is depleted. His eyes become dim. A foul odor emanates from his mouth and his armpits. The hair of his head, his eyebrows, and eyelashes can fall out. The hair of his beard, armpits, and legs grows in abundance and thick. His teeth fall out, and he suffers many pains beyond these. The wise of the doctors have said, 1 of 1,000 dies from other illnesses, and 1,000 dies from excessive intercourse. Therefore, a person must take care in this matter if he wishes to live a good, healthy life. He should not engage in intercourse except when the body is healthy and particularly strong. When he has many involuntary erections, the erection is still present even when he makes an effort to think of something else. He finds a heaviness from the loins and below. The tendons and the testicles seem to be stretched, and his flesh is warm. Such a person needs to engage in intercourse, and it's medically advisable. Obviously, he has to be married to a wife, and his wife has to be pure. But the point being here is that the Rambam is not just telling us a health course just for the sake of giving us a diet plan. He doesn't have a food store. He doesn't have a chain that's operating 800 years after he already left this world. What he's telling us is that all of what you eat is going to result in a certain level of health. If you're healthy, the outcome will be a healthy seed. But if you waste that healthy seed, aside from the punishments and the Gehenom and everything else, you'll waste all the hard work. Because some people, they eat healthy, they exercise, they do all the things that they're supposed to with their diet. But they are excessive when it comes to intimacy. They're promiscuous, they're simply doing things beyond the norm, and they waste a good thing and turn it into a bad thing. So everything has quality and quantity. Now, as I said about the 5 things that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai said, those 5 things, those 5 warnings are not obligations, but certainly only a fool would violate them after knowing what they are. Here, he's telling you these are obligations. Where do we learn these obligations? Why is it that you may not realize that gluttony is an obligation. It's a prohibition for you to be a glutton, to overindulge in food. Now, the Rambam has a book called Sefer HaMitzvot. And you have the positive mitzvot and the negative mitzvot. Mitzvah 195 says, Hashem prohibited us from being steeped in eating and drinking at a young age. What is prohibited, says the Rambam? The eating and drinking in a matter characterized by the Ben Sorer Umoreh. Ben Sorer Umoreh is mentioned in the Torah in the book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 26. He is the rebellious son. This is what the exalted God said in the Torah, also in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 21, verse 21. You shall not eat over the blood. And the explanation is that the Ben Sorer Umoreh is one of those that's liable to a death penalty by the high court, by the Sanhedrin. And the Torah is stating explicitly that his method of punishment is stoning, which is the worst death penalty that exists. And what is this all about? This is because this young person was a glutton that couldn't stop eating and drinking. Eating meat and drinking wine. To the point where they knew that if he eats all of what he has, he's going to start stealing and hurting other people and even killing people for it. So they said it's better to kill him now before he kills other people. And as a whole section of the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin, talks about the Ben Sorer Umoreh, what are the conditions for him to be Ben Sorer Umoreh. But in so many words, what we all learn is that gluttony is a prohibition. It's forbidden for us to be gluttons. It's forbidden for a person to overindulge. At the same time, the Ravad tells us that there's no problem with you enjoying life. There's no problem with you enjoying good food. The problem is only when a person makes food the top of their priority in life, something they think about constantly, something that they overindulge in, indulge their energy, indulge their time, indulge, obviously, their body in it. That's when it's a serious problem. Now, as we said before, most people, when they think about food, and perhaps the health aspect of food, usually they're thinking about the quality of food. So they'll tell you, I only eat a healthy food. I only eat proteins. I only eat vegetables. I only eat, animals that were grown in a free farm, and that's all great. But in reality, that is not necessarily eliminating the possibility of gluttony that could both destroy the body and the soul. A person can say, listen, I have a clean food. Fine. You went to a clean restaurant and clean food, and all of a sudden you ate the clean sandwich and the hairs came out of that sandwich, where apparently the guy that was preparing that sandwich left his brush inside. So yeah, it's clean until you find out it's not necessarily so clean. But it doesn't have to be dirty like that, because the reality is that even if the food that you eat in that restaurant, or even if you prepare yourself, doesn't have hair in it, doesn't have dirt on it, doesn't have some cockroach on it, it's not dirty, it's not a bad food. But if you eat too much of it, if you've exerted too much energy to acquire it, if your life is literally revolves around it, then it's poisonous anyway. Meaning it doesn't have to be physically dirty for it to be damaging. Rabbi Efraim says that when he was young and he saw how some of the guys in the yeshiva loved cars, especially, the fancy cars, the fast cars. And anytime, one of these cars appeared somewhere, everybody would stop their day. He says, I thought then that really these fancy cars should be forbidden for us to look at, just like we're not allowed to look at women that are not our wives. And today he says, watching the food channel, watching TV, watching a video about how other people are eating, how people are cooking, he says that also should be forbidden. It's not forbidden, but it should be forbidden. Why? Because those two things, looking at other people's fancy property, their cars, their houses, that type of stuff, or people eating or cooking, what is it doing for you? Other than waking up all of those lusts, all of those desires that are completely unnecessary. Now, if you're watching it to learn how to cook, fine, you could really just get the recipe. But let's say you want to watch it once in a while, no problem. But if a person is constantly finding themselves just watching the food channel, watching, and it's not because they're cooking, it's not because they're even following anything. They just like to watch food. Just like a person can see, they're not buying a car. They're not looking for a new Ferrari. They're not looking for a new airplane. They're not looking for a new $50 million house. They just like to look at other people's houses and other people's cars. That is bad. Why? It's waking up all of those desires that are going to take you out of control. Now you may think, oh, okay, so I won't look at cars anymore. What's the big deal if I look at a car? What, am I going to marry the car? What's the big deal if I look at a bunch of food? What, am I going to marry the food? What's the big deal? How could that be compared to a forbidden woman? The key is to understand is that once you wake up, those forbidden desires by choice, all of those other desires that are forbidden also get the okay, get the permission to wake up. And it's just like if a person sees, he's walking on the road and there's an immodest woman ahead of him. If, as soon as he sees that she is in front of him, she has no arms and legs, meaning she's not covering her body, as soon as he sees that she's in his way, he looks away, it's not a sin. Why? She is part of the world. He saw her, but he looked away. So he got that first image, but he looked away. So that little image is not considered a sin. But if he stays looking, or he does one of those, like, the two-time, that's a sin. Same concept with a person, if he sees a fancy car, or he sees somebody cooking. You see it the first time, no problem. But once you put yourself in that situation, you're looking for videos or pictures of food or of fancy cars or of houses, or all types of other things that are going to wake up that desire, that lust within you, you're also going to wake up the desires you don't mean to wake up. The desires that are for things that are outright forbidden. Now, one of the things that a person needs to know is that when it comes to food, the truth is we shouldn't really have any lust for food. If somebody thought about it rationally, they would understand why some of the great sages that lived among us, literally still live among us today, some of them, you're never going to find these lust for food. Even though sometimes you'll see that some of them are very heavy, it's not because they eat a lot, but rather because of the lifestyle they live, where they are sitting all the time, they eat rarely, they sleep very little, so their body doesn't digest as quickly, and therefore they gain weight, not because they're eating 5 meals a day. Rav Kanievsky, Rav Ovadia, all of these great sages, they don't. If they ate once, it was already a lot. Rabbi Yosef, Shichyeh, says that when they were kids, Rav Ovadia was very, very poor. He said that if they had a tomato to go with their piece of bread, it was considered like a Yom Tov. It was considered like a holiday. But he says, Abba, you meaning Rav Ovadia, if there wasn't bread, you just wouldn't eat for the day. Meaning there would literally be fast days. Not because of choice. Simply there was no food. One time the Rabbanit, she would prepare some type of food for him. So when he would come back from his day, usually he would have shiurim every night. And he would come back late at night, especially during the month of Elul. So one night, she made a pot of food. And after she finished making the pot of food, she made she went back to her work and she started making the starch. You know, in those days you had to make the starch for the colors. So she cooked it. She was cooking it. And after she finished, you know, both pots were next to each other. One pot of starch, that's obviously not something you're supposed to eat. That's for the shirts. That's to fix the collars. And one is food. Usually she waited for the Rav, but this night, it was very, very late. She went to sleep. As soon as she went to sleep, she felt that everything is ready. She made sure that the Rav could know exactly where the food is, and that's it. The next morning, she wakes up, and the Rav Ovadia already is out. He's already learning. She gets to the kitchen, and she opens the pot, and she sees that the pot is full of food. She says, what, the Rav didn't eat last night? He didn't eat the whole day? Ay, ay, ay. She felt so bad that the rabbi didn't eat. Her husband didn't eat. He says, Rabbi, how come you didn't eat? No, I ate. It was good. It was good. She knows that the rabbi is not going to lie to her. She went back to the kitchen. She opened the pot. The food is there. Then she opens the second pot, the starch, because she has to go use it now. It's completely empty. She starts laughing, and she goes back to Rav Ovadia. She goes, it was good? You liked it? She says, yeah, sure, Baruch Hashem, it was good. Fine, it was nothing wrong. Good, Baruch Hashem. Like usual, everything is good. She says, my dear husband, you ate starch. You ate starch, that's what you ate. Rabbi said, no, it was good. What? No, it's not food. Like, his mind was so deep into the Torah, it didn't make a difference what's in front of him. It's red, blue, green. It didn't make a difference. He's just eating. Okay, eat so the body can stay alive and go back to learning Torah. And this was the attitude that Gdolei Yisrael had throughout the generations, where, yes, food is necessary, but don't turn it into an idol. Don't turn it into your life. Many times people, they don't realize that even if they're not physically healthy, even if they're not health conscious about their diets, even if they're not necessarily so careful about what they eat, they still turn food into their God. Why? Because the whole day, they're planning their day based on what they're going to eat and where they're going to eat. Oh, what are we eating for breakfast? Oh, you want to go from that restaurant? Last time he gave me, it was kind of cold, the food. Maybe we're going to go to the other restaurant. 20 minutes just to figure out what to eat for breakfast. Now, 11 o'clock, they're already preparing what they're going to eat at 12:30. Lunch. Can't miss a lunch. So what are we eating for lunch today, guys? I don't know. What do you want to eat? Chinese? Nah, Chinese. We had Chinese already. Okay, so what do you want? You want Korean? You want Indian? You want Mars? You want Pluto? What do you want to eat? Everybody goes, I want fish, I want this, I want this. 25 minutes, a half hour arguments. About what? What we're going to eat for lunch. Now, by the time you finish lunch, you have to go fill up the rest of your day, but you're already thinking about what we're going to have for dinner tonight. You guys want to go out? Oh, you know what? I'm going to take the old lady out. We're going to go somewhere, and I'm going to take her to our favorite steakhouse. I'm going to take her to our favorite, your whole day is determined based on meals. That's a problem. That's a very, if you're spending that much time planning your day based on what you're going to eat, you know places, you literally, you know the menu by heart. It's a problem. Sometimes you get to meet certain people where literally they become food connoisseurs. Oh, this type of steak has to be medium rare, and that one is rare medium. Just give me the meat, let me eat, and move on with my life. No, it can't be in that way. It's a shame. You're wasting it. You're destroying it, and all types of things. This is a person that spent way too much time eating. way too much time on food. And that is certainly not a healthy, both physically and spiritually. The other thing is, some people go to the extent where they indulge and enable those food addicts and create new ones. How? Simple. They raise special cows. They have cows on a farm, free farm. All the cows could walk around, they could skate, they could do ballet, they could do whatever they want, but just make sure these cows are free. Or, if you want them to be even more special cows, make sure that these cows drink some beer and listen to Beethoven. I'm not really sure how a steak that has some Beethoven and music in it tastes like, but apparently for some people it's worth $1,000 a pound. Literally, you have people, they're willing to spend thousands of dollars just to travel across the ocean to go for a lunch, to go for a dinner, just to have this meat, just to have this chicken or have this fish, or go to Japan for their special $1 million sushi. Why? Because they've become such gluttonous people, it's taken over their lives. Now, these companies, restaurants, chefs, only exist because there's a demand for it. If there was no demand, there wouldn't be a $100,000 cake. If there was no demand, there wouldn't be a $100,000 burger. If there was no demand, there wouldn't be a fast food restaurant in every single corner. If there was no demand, the average restaurant wouldn't have 25 different items on the menu. Why isn't 2 or 3 enough? Because people literally have turned food into almost like a religion without even realizing it. Now, of course, it's a mitzvah to eat and enjoy each little bit of each food on Shabbat as part of the mitzvah. But no one says it's a mitzvah to eat until your head doubles in size, until you're about to explode. You know, there's a funny statement that says, chamin chayav mita. Anyone that eats chamin, or it's called also chulent, is chayav mita. Chayav mita sounds like he's obligated in death, but mita is with a tet, is obligated to go to bed. Why? Because he ate so much that he's going to fall asleep. So, when a person literally forgets that the taste of that food that he's thinking about for hours and hours of his day, literally he's spending 2, 3, 4 hours a day just thinking about food, which means that he's spending 20% of his life, 20% of her life or more, just eating or thinking about eating. Now, out of all of this time that you're thinking and planning for eating, how much time is actually spent tasting the food? Seconds. Because usually the more gluttonous the person is, the quicker they eat. The less they enjoy the food, in fact. Because the less time the food is in their mouth, because they eat fast. Because already when they eat their first bite, they already look at the next one. It's like, whoa, that one has some tomato in it. It's looking at me. I gotta have it, so chew fast. Yes, oh, wait. It's a cucumber in the next one. Get that one, and the other one, and this one. And he's literally racing. Before he realized he finished. He finished the food, but he also forgot to taste any of it. Generally speaking, even if a person does what they recommend, people recommend to chew 13 to 15 times any bite that you eat, fine, let's say he chews it until it becomes liquid, 15 times, no problem. How long does 15 chews take? 15 seconds. That's it. 15 seconds, you're finished. How many bites you can eat? 10, 15, 20 bites. Meaning, on a good day, where you've eaten every bite, 15 seconds. You have 10 bites, that's a little more than 2 minutes. That's how long it took you to eat. You have 20 bites, okay, so you ate for a little more than that, double that. 4 minutes. The reality is the amount of time that a person enjoys the taste that was literally spent so much time on, making, preparing, paying for it. You may not have made it, but you literally spent a whole day's work on it. How? Between the thinking about it and literally making the money to pay for it. People don't think about that. Oh, I'm going to go to a steakhouse. And a steakhouse is going to cost me $200-$300. How much money do you make? Oh, I make $200-$300 a day. Oh, so you're spending a whole day just to eat steak tonight? Like, that makes sense to you? There's no problem of doing it once in a while, but no one really does it once in a while anymore. People literally make their life around going out to this place and that place. And that's why in places like New York and Los Angeles, where generally speaking it's high income society, very, very few actually have assets. Because they spend everything, many times eating it or consuming it in things that are disposable. So here, the Ramban is telling us that this lust for food leads to gluttony. It leads to overindulgence. An overindulgence that doesn't even make any rational sense. Because if you were to think the amount of time that you spend preparing the food, or preparing to eat the food at some restaurant, versus the amount of time that you're actually going to taste the food and benefit from it, it doesn't justify. It doesn't justify. No one says you have to eat board or something, or eat some piece of wood, but it doesn't justify that much investment into it. Needless to say, if now you're going to not only plan and spend and exert, but the result will not only be actual enjoyment out of it that's minimal, but even worse, the result will actually be detrimental to you, where the food that you're eating, even if it's healthy, is still harmful to you because you're overeating. That overeating is really the biggest point that is the danger here. Enjoying a piece of food, going to a nice restaurant, ordering whatever you like to eat, that's not the key part of the danger. Sometimes ordering is the most convenient thing you could do. You don't have time. You don't want to spend time cooking. You want to spend time learning, working, doing a lot of productive things. So it's easy to press a few buttons and just order some food. There's no problem with ordering, especially if you enjoy it, no problem. But once you make it a priority in your day, a topic of the day, something so significant, and then you get to a point where you want to literally enjoy every second of it to the point where literally you're eating enough for 2 or 3 people, and you leave that meal as if you just ate a person, now you've gotten to the point where you've turned that blessing into a curse. Where do we see this in the Torah? Some of the worst places. One of them that I mentioned already is the Ben Sorer Umoreh. The Ben Sorer Umoreh is the glutton, is the drunkard, that even though he's below bar mitzvah age of 13, he still gets a death penalty of stoning. He should have learned from Esav. Esav, we know from the book of Genesis, is called Edom. Why is he called Edom? He's called Edom, the Torah says, after the whole interaction between him and his brother Yaakov. He comes back from hunting. He comes back from killing. He just killed Nimrod that day. He just raped a woman. He just did 5 different sins during that day. He comes back. He's tired. Yaakov, who studied all day, had to make a meal to eat. So he made a pot of lentil soup. As soon as Esav sees this, he says to him, give it to me, or I'm going to die. So Yaakov sees this opportunity. He says, okay, give me your firstborn rights. You don't value it anyway. Esav says, who cares about the firstborn rights? Go ahead, you're firstborn. But make sure to pour this food from the pot into my mouth. And there the Torah says, Esav is Edom. Why is Esav Edom? It says Esav is Edom because the food was Edom. The food was red. So what? If you eat green food, you become green, called Green Monster? You're the Incredible Hulk? Well, no. It's that the food defined who Esav was. Not the color of the food, but rather that one day that he ate the food that way was not the first time he ate food that way. He was always that way. Esav was such a glutton, was such a materialistic person. His whole life revolved around materialism. That's why he had no problem murdering Nimrod, because Nimrod had something that he wanted, being the clothing of Adam HaRishon. That's why he had no problem of killing a woman, because she had something that he wanted. That's why he had no problem selling the firstborn rights, because Yaakov had something that he had, food. He was such a materialistic person that if he couldn't have what he wanted, he simply couldn't tolerate life. So he said, give it to me. I don't even want to waste time putting it in a bowl, getting utensils. Just pour it directly in my mouth. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says in the Torah, Esav is Edom. He's called after the food that he ate, not because the food was red, but rather because that minute that he did it defined who he was. Not just that minute, but his entire life, that's how he was. So the gluttony of Esav defined who he was. Unfortunately, what people don't realize is that when a person overindulges in one thing, it opens up the possibilities, the likelihood, and even the desire to overindulge in other things. If he overindulges in food, it's not just food. He'll overindulge in anything else that he can. Because once a person loses their sense of control, of self-control, then they're simply going to lose their sense of control over a lot of other things. Hence the reason why people that are wealthy and are able to overindulge with, let's say, food, they also overindulge with promiscuity. They also overindulge with gambling and money matters. They also overindulge with other types of things that literally make that their entire life one big disaster. It's not that they're just overindulging in one thing and one thing only. They're going to overindulge in whatever they have access to. So some people are only going to overindulge in food. Usually that's because they can't afford anything else. They can't do anything else. But if they can, they do. Because once you've accustomed yourself to overindulge in one thing, whether it's gluttony of food or gluttony of money or gluttony of women or all types of men or whatever it is, there's no limitation. A person could literally turn themselves into a monster that will ruin not just their own life, their marriage, and needless to say, their intimacy. Because if he does not know how to control himself when it comes to eating, there's no way that he's going to be able to control himself when it comes to intimacy. He's either going to want too much, or he's going to only be concerned about himself, completely eliminating the thought process that it's supposed to be enjoyable for both him and his wife, or vice versa. A woman that is overindulgent doesn't have to be overindulgent in food only. It could be overindulgent in money matters. But that will lead her to become overindulgent in food or overindulgent in her own selfishness in intimacy. And this loss of control by choice leads to a disaster when it comes to marriage and a disaster when it comes to intimacy. Now, one of the examples that we see overindulgence stick out its really ugly head recently in the Jewish world. Obviously, the non-Jewish world, it's a standard, unfortunately, these matters. But in the Jewish world, we, at the very least, as well as society, expects more of us. So when you see these things, you have to highlight them, because if you don't, they're just going to continue getting worse. One of the things that we see now is that this loss of desire to work for something, this loss of desire to earn something, is something that comes from gluttony, something that comes from making ourselves okay with overindulgence, okay with demand, at any given moment, meaning without any patience whatsoever. The button generation, where you press a button and you want whatever you want to happen right away. Now, if this was only something that affected shopping, affected, your bank account, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing in the world, but it never is. And what's happened now is that Am Yisrael is known about the prohibition from anything that's harmful to you, harmful to your health, but needless to say, drugs. Drugs have always been forbidden in the Jewish world. Several years ago, I was invited to do some lectures in New York, and we did a whole lecture about drugs, the drug addiction in the community, which really affects mostly secular people, mostly people that are not involved in the Torah. But in recent times, it started affecting more and more people that are actually religious. Now, how could this be? A few people that consider themselves rabbis, spiritual leaders, psychopaths, they probably don't consider themselves, but they should, apparently said that there is a permission to connect to God through spiritual drugs. One, as I mentioned a few years ago, said that marijuana is perfectly fine to use if that's going to help you connect to God better. In the last few years, what's taken the Jewish world by storm, especially the most religious Jewish world, is a psychedelic drug called ayahuasca. This ayahuasca is a psychedelic. It's something that makes a person see things, feel things, and many times makes them believe that they're seeing something supernatural, whether they're seeing God or angels, and some will even say this is actually making them closer to God. The truth is, anyone that has watched that lecture years ago would know that this is completely forbidden according to the Torah. Now, what about those rabbis that are saying, no, they're doing tshuva because they're taking ayahuasca. They're doing tshuva, they're learning more Torah because they're smoking marijuana. Well, guess what? The Torah has discussed this. And the psak halacha is, it's not allowed. Why is it not allowed? The Iggeret Moshe, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, writes in Yoreh De'ah, Chelek Zayin, Siman, Kaf Bet, 722, in Yoreh De'ah in Iggeret Moshe, that these drugs, when they're taking electively, meaning you're not being fed these drugs because you are in your life's at risk, you're some cancer patient or a mental institution. No. You are choosing to smoke marijuana. You're choosing to ingest ayahuasca or any of the likes. They, number one, ruin the body and the mind. They desecrate the body and the mind. They turn the person into a shoteh. A shoteh means a person like a drunkard, a person that's not mentally all there, and therefore cannot be considered part of a minyan, cannot be considered for his actions. You can't calculate his sins or his mitzvot. In fact, anything that they do during that time, even if it's a mitzvah, doesn't count. He learns Torah while he's high, it doesn't count as a mitzvah. He prays while he's high, it's a sin. It's not a mitzvah. Why? Because to serve your Creator, you have to be at complete focus, not high, not having your mentality altered by some type of chemical or plant. And in fact, this intentional shoteh that thinks he's doing a mitzvah, that heard some rabbi that pretends to be a chassid, that pretends to be elevated from other people and the likes, every single thing that they do during that time is not only not considered a mitzvah, it's considered a sin. How big is the sin? Says Rav Moshe Feinstein, because you made yourself an intentional shoteh, you are in the same level, same category as the ben sorer umoreh, the wayward child that gets the death penalty of stoning. Had Moshe Rabbeinu or the Sanhedrin seen you with your ayahuasca, with your marijuana, they would arrest you immediately and kill you. Yeah, but it got me closer to God. Now you're going to be real close. Just not in this world anymore. So what about the rabbis that told me that I can take it? To my knowledge, it's only a few psychopaths that call themselves rabbis that recommend it. The rest of them are just simply drug dealers. Guess what? They're individual opinions that no one considers. No one will ever consider, because they're against halacha. We have halacha, it doesn't change. The fact that you think that you can get closer to God by skipping learning Torah, by skipping praying, by skipping the toil, by skipping the hard work, is a result of you accustoming yourself to overindulgence. To, I want now, without an effort. How did ayahuasca and marijuana and all of this garbage enter the most religious communities in the world? Simple. Somebody wanted a shortcut. Why would anybody want a shortcut when you know that we've been waiting for the Mashiach for 2,000 years? Certainly not a shortcut. When you know that to become a Talmid Chacham takes a lifetime, certainly not a shortcut. When you know to finish the Shas, even if you are a genius, will still take you a while. Everything in Judaism takes time. To pray in the morning takes an hour. The Gentiles ask, how is it that the Jews are so smart? Simple. If you're a religious Jew, first thing in the morning you're reading 200 pages. First thing, every single morning you're reading 200 pages. On Shabbat, 400. Just to start off the day, that's our prayer. Afternoon, another 50. At night, another 35, 40. That's just our prayer. That's not even our studies. All of it takes time. Why did you think reaching the ultimate levels of connection to God shouldn't take any time? Could simply be done with a little pill, or a little drink, or a little puff. Why did you think that makes any sense? Because you weren't thinking with your Torah hat. You were thinking with your lust hat. The same lust and gluttony and overindulgence that took over you when it came to food, or when it came to money, or when it came to morality, issues of promiscuity, issues of between him and her. You figured that I could have as much of this as I want, so therefore I could have as much of this as I want. And therefore I could have as much of this as I want. But everybody keeps talking about this God thing and getting close to God, so I want as much of that as I want also. But I don't want to wait 50 years to become the next Rav Kanievsky. I don't want to wait 80 years to become the next leader. I want now. How can I get it now? Your local drug dealer will tell you. Yeah, you'll be flying high. One little pill, one little puff, you are in, not ayahuasca, you're in Hawaii. You're in wherever you want. And guess what? You're also in Gehenom. You also have a decree of death penalty on you. You also are as far from the truth as it literally gets. You are living a delusional life while you're awake. Meaning, your highlight is this state of mind under the drug, but that has less lies in it than the life that you're living. Because your life, when you're not high, you're thinking you're doing okay. In reality, you're living such a lie that you're thinking that you're religious. You're thinking that you're close to HaShem. You're thinking that you're serving HaShem. And the worst part about it is that typically people that do this recommend it to other people, which means that you become a machtia rabim. You become a person that causes other people to sin. Where does all this come from? Somebody just wakes up, a religious married woman, and all of a sudden she starts taking drugs? Somebody just wakes up, a rabbi, and the next day wants to take drugs, wants to do psychedelics. Somebody wakes up in yeshiva, wants to take... No, it doesn't happen that way. What happens is, megalgelim zchut al yedei zakai v'chova al yedei chayav. The upper heavens decide everything that's going to happen. Someone that does good and wants good, Hashem gives him good. Someone that does good but also does bad, and sometimes wants bad. He wants her, even though she's not his wife. He acts as if she is. He thinks as if she is. He wants that, even though it's not his. So he takes it and makes it his. Whether he steals it or he cheats for it, he starts indulging. He starts accustoming himself. She starts accustoming herself that indulgence is fine. I'm just enjoying life. And this type of mindset has unfortunately become almost a norm in certain parts of our society, where you see people literally go on Pesach retreats that literally cost enough to put a down payment on a house. Oh, we're going away for Pesach. Where are you going? To your mom's house? No. To your father's house? To your kids? Who are you going? Down the street? Where are you going? No, we're going on this retreat. What, isn't it like $5,000-$10,000 a person, and you guys have 15 people in the family? Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's great. You coming? No. I'm not going to spend $100,000 to be for Pesach. But people do it all the time. They're going for Pesach, $75,000, $100,000. And that's just Pesach. What about Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur? Another 100, 150,000. Now again, Mabruk, you have money, no problem. But how is it that you're spending 75, 100,000 on Pesach, but when it comes to helping the local shul with some tzedakah for something useful, the avrechim, oh yeah, I'll give $200. Wait, so to go eat, 75,000. To tell the time, 150,000. To live, 3 million, million and a half, whatever, all types of crazy numbers. But when it comes for things that matter, all of a sudden it doesn't make sense. Why? Because again, a person that accustoms themselves to indulgence, to gluttony, to a sinful life, also loses their merit to do good, their merit to receive good. So it literally becomes a deadly diet, a killer diet, something that kills life as we know it. He starts with allowing himself to simply eat everything and anything as long as it's kosher. He goes to the event, he spent $200, $300, $400 to give him a gift. He wants to get his money worth. So he'll eat 2 or 3 servings from the buffet. He'll eat his whole meal and maybe perhaps even whatever is left over from his kids. Why? He wants to get his money's worth. It's kosher. Why? It's not allowed? Just because it's kosher doesn't mean you have to eat the cow. Just because it's kosher doesn't mean that you have to rent out the entire farm. And a person simply indulges in such a fashion, he doesn't see anything wrong with it. Why? Because it's a mitzvah to eat kosher food. You're right. But it's a sin to be a glutton. And he does the same thing when it comes to money. Oh, Rabbi, why? It's a mitzvah to work and make money, right? It's got to give tzedakah, right? But nobody told you to work 18, 20 hours a day, pretty much see your kids once they're already old and they're visiting you in a nursing home. No one said that you need to live your life in such a fashion where money is all you're thinking about, and you're talking about it on your Shabbat table, you're talking about it on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in the middle of the night, during the day, like all you're thinking about is this money and this business, and it becomes a addiction. No one told you that's okay. And when a person starts thinking that's okay, then before you know it, a lot of other things become okay. Adultery becomes okay, promiscuity becomes okay, and simply acting the opposite of what you're supposed to, the opposite of how you were brought up, the opposite of what you yourself knew was good, becomes acceptable. But that spark in you wants a connection to God. You're not going to get it when you pray. You're not learning. So how are you going to get it? Oh, the Satan will send you a solution. He'll send you some fake drug dealer pretending to be a rabbi. It tells you, listen, you connect to God through the teachings of Hasidut. What teachings of Hasidut? Oh yeah, the Hasidim said that over here you can take... No Hasid ever said such things. Dust should be put in the mouths of those people that say such things. They tell you take drugs, but they call it other things. Sophisticated names. And unfortunately, Rabotai, this all stems from the same thing. Allowing yourself to be a glutton. Turning that killer diet into a lifestyle. And thus says the Torah that the one that is the wayward son, the Ben Soror Moreh, is taken out of this world before the damage is too far to repair, too big to repair. And the Ramban continues and says, he should not eat more than to sustain his soul. As Shlomo HaMelech said, the righteous eats to the satisfaction of his soul, but the belly of the wicked shall want. This is in Mishneh, Proverbs chapter 13, verse 25. And the wise man whose eyes are in his head, meaning a person that has a rational mindset, sees clearly, will choose the good way for him and his progeny, will listen to the wise and learn from this, and therefore keep to this important principle of the matter of foods in relation to the union. If a person starts thinking of the food that they eat in connection to what's going to come out of them, what's going to come out of them as far as their servitude of God, what's going to come out of them as far as the children they can produce, what's going to come out of them is also what kind of lifestyle they will have, because one permission to be a glutton, one permission to kosher a pig, meaning something that's forbidden, is going to yield other forbidden actions. It's only a matter of time. When he starts looking at it as, wow, this meal is not just about saying thank you to God before I eat and thank you to God after I eat. I have to think about HaShem way before I even thought about eating, while I'm eating, and after I'm eating, because all of it has to connect to Him, or else I'm no different than the elephant, or else I'm no different than a cow. To give you an example of how this worked in real life, Arav Mordechai Eliyahu, Alav HaShalom, was also the Rishon LeZion, Ish Kodesh. He was like the father of Am Yisrael. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, he was loved by all. He was a big Chacham, big Tzadik. One time he was invited by a billionaire Jew, to his island, to his place in Gibraltar. And apparently this very, very wealthy man wanted to celebrate in the honor of the tzaddik. He wanted to have an event where he invited some of his wealthy friends to his palace over there. And the rabbi came with a few of his talmidim to this place where, in order to get there, to this island, you had to take a helicopter. So they arrive at private helicopter, private everything. Finally, they get to the house, and the rabbi sees already that all of the workers are running around, doing everything to set up the place for this big event. It's going to have, hundreds of people there. And he sees they're all putting down everything, and now everything is beautiful and set. And all of the utensils are gold. We're not talking about gold-plated. The forks, the knives, the spoons, they're all actual gold. That's how wealthy this guy was. Now, the guy's proud of everything he's doing. It's the honor of the rabbi, the honor of the Torah, right? First question from Rav Mordechai Eliyahu to the host, to the billionaire. Did you dip them in the mikveh? The guy didn't know what hit him. He goes, huh? What mikveh? What are you talking about? The utensils, the forks, the knives, spoons, the plates. Everything dip in the mikveh? No, Rabbi, they're gold. They're gold. They're brand new. I got them. Yeah. Where'd you get? I got them from some guy sold me, made it all custom for me. Wait, so you didn't dip in the mikveh? Not allowed to eat from them. Oh, but Rabbi, they're all set. Not allowed to eat. What can we do? You have to dip them. The guy was wealthy enough to get this done, but how? He hired a bungee jumping company. Bunch of guys came. All the staff that he had took all of the utensils, the plates, the spoons, the knives, everything. Took it to the top of the mountain. Because on top of the mountain there was a cliff. Cliff overseeing the ocean. The bungee jumping company would go with some of it. They would give them some, dip them all the way down the ocean. Dip. The rabbi watching every single one. Good. Go back up. Dip. Good. Go back up. Some of them fell down, became a national treasure under the ocean. Some of them came back up. Long story short, this whole thing took 3 hours. 3 hours they're dipping from the cliff into the ocean to make sure every single thing is pure to be used. The rabbi is very happy. Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of schut. It's a big mitzvah you did. So the guy is happy, Baruch Hashem. Now the time for the event. Everybody shows up. Everybody's there. Food starts coming out. The rabbi is sitting at the head. And the food's going to come to him. He goes, no, it's okay. I don't want. So the owner is not sure what's happening here, but he can't say much. He just watch. The rabbi, obviously, is not like one of his friends. As he sees something that he will never forget in his life. All the plates went to the mikveh. All the spoons went to the mikveh. An ocean, the best mikveh in the world. So you would think the rabbi's happy with everything. He is. But it doesn't mean he's going to eat the food. It's kosher. Doesn't mean that he has to eat it. What's he going to eat? The rabbi takes out from his bag a little sandwich with chocolate that the Rabbanit made for him, chocolate spread like Nutella. The Rabbanit made for him back at home in Israel. He has it in a little Ziploc bag, takes out the Ziploc bag, puts it on the gold plate, and he eats. And he does the blessing with everybody, wash their hands like everybody else, and that's his motzi, that's what he eats, Baruch Hashem. What about the steak and the 5-course meal, all that stuff? No. That's gluttony. That's extra. What do I need all that stuff for? So what about all the plates? It's good. The plates need to be kosher for everybody else. Doesn't mean I have to eat the food. But why? Because the little sandwich the Rabbanit made is perfectly fine. Why do I need anything extra? No one is telling you to just eat a little sandwich for the rest of your life. But just understand that when we talk about the sages, we talk about great rabbis, we talk about great tzadikim, they weren't great because they just had a good memory or they read a lot of books. They were great from beginning to end of every single day, beginning to end of every thought, beginning to end of every action was different than everyone else because they understood that yes, it's perfectly fine to eat that steak. It's perfectly fine to eat that 3, 4, 15 course meal. It's perfectly fine. But what do I need it for? What do I need to this extra indulgence in my life if the satiation could be done just as well without the indulgence? And if I don't open up this indulgence and turn it into this gluttony, turn it into something bad, then that's also protecting me from anything else that it could bring. The lust for money, the lust for women, the lust for all of the other things that are prohibited. So the restraint wasn't because he wasn't hungry, wasn't because food is not good, wasn't because of kashrut, but rather the restraint was because this was a part of life that was necessary to get to where he wanted to be in life. Now, we are all at different levels, but certainly all of us can use some better performance, can use some better actions, can improve in so many words. All of us can. Perhaps 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes less thinking about food. Perhaps not eating as much. Perhaps not thinking as much about eating. Perhaps not wasting your time, life, and mind looking at other people's property. Perhaps spending more time connecting to God rather than imagining that there's a shortcut. Perhaps helping others do the same. Thank you very much for learning with me. May Hashem bless each and every single one of us to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the one and only way, the long route that's really the short route. We'll see each other again tomorrow.